So let me get this out of the way immediately. Yes, this is obviously inspired by Overanalyzing Avatar. If you haven't seen his videos and channel, I will link them in the description because he's awesome and deserves more recognition. Now, past that, I'm still going to try and do it my own way. Something I will do that he did was go over some characters' introductory lines, because that's a pretty neat thing to do, and beyond that, future episodes won't have any preamble. I'll also be pointing out some specific background ponies throughout the entire series, because I want to know how many scenes they're in. Predominantly Lyra, Bonbon, and Derpy, though I might point out other ones just once because they're interesting, and that gives you something to look out for. There's probably more things I'm forgetting, but let's just get into it. And lastly, I'm going to be using a lot of stills over actual clips because Hasbro is freaky like that, and I'm not interested in dealing with it. Starting off with Celestia and Luna's proto designs. Celestia being a more plain pink-white, with Luna being more weirdly well decorated, as if she was going to be a more prominent character, which she isn't. So I can see why they didn't go with these designs. Luna's would probably work, but Celestia's pretty bland, and the ones we get are definitely a lot more interesting to see. Though I do like these. Something that don't really get to see talked about a lot is how Celestia can just sort of wield all of the elements of harmony by herself, which is not something we ever, I don't know if we ever see in the future, actually. I'm pretty sure we don't, but hey, if I get proven wrong shortly after this, then I guess I get proven wrong. It's just interesting. It kind of shows how bad she was back then, 1,000 years ago. Which means, oh yeah, she totally must have just only improved since then. I guess we'll find out. So Twilight's first lines come in here, and it's literally just her reading a book and pondering, which is basically her entire character, so yeah, it's pretty good. She reads a lot, she ponders a lot, she questions everything, she wants to learn as much as possible. It's a really good way to establish her character, showing all that sort of stuff. I don't have a lot to say about the intro, because it's just sort of the intro. It shows us a bunch of characters we'll meet later, but I will point out Bonbon. There that bitch is. She just be there. The only other thing I'll point out from the intro is how Celestia's design. She's got the rainbow mane now instead of just the pure pink, and she's fucking massive compared to the size of the room, the chair, the guards, etc. Here we meet Twilight's Canterlot friends, who will eventually show up later. They drop Moondancer's name, which will be important later as well. And let's see, we got Hourglass Butt being Minuet, who we don't know what she does really. She just sort of hangs around. Lemonheart, who is weirdly enough the yellow one, is an event planner. And Twinkleshine, love that, is a choir member who I believe has stars on her butt. So I was originally going to show Twilight demonstrating all of the antithetical portions of the elements of harmony, but she doesn't really display the antithetical to generosity, which I would assume would be greed. And so since she doesn't do that, it sort of throws a lot of things out the window. Same thing with like laughter. It's kind of ambiguous what the opposite of that would be, but there are some things that do correlate to that, such as here she demonstrates the opposite of honesty, where she just sort of lies and says she's going to go do other stuff. It's not entirely a lie, because she is going to go study, but it's not like actually important studying. She's just sort of ditching her friends for no good reason. And yeah, you could argue, oh, but the end of the world is coming, but Twilight is demonstrating here that she doesn't really care about friendship. She cares more about her studies and learning and potentially solving problems and being important. We'll get more into it later as her character develops. This is it, Lyra Heartstring's first appearance. How many appearances will she have by the end? I'm going to keep track. Let me know if I should do like an on-screen counter or something. Alright, Spike's first line. He is considerate for others, as he got a gift for Moondancer, the party he thought they were going to, and he also doesn't seem to enjoy work very much. You get the sense from him just sort of being like, we're on vacation. Twilight shows another sort of antithesis style to an element, where she shows the opposite of kindness towards ignoring Spike, wanting to go, be friends with Moondancer and such. So that's another interesting point. Again, I think the theory doesn't really hold as much as I would like it to, but I'm still going to point it out when I see it. And here we get our first introduction to the magic system of the series, outside of, the intro telling us about how Celestia and Luna control the sun and moon. Twilight uses some levitation here, as we see with her magic. This tells us that a unicorn, given that the horn is glowing, can use magic of some kind. We don't know what other type of magic exists yet, but we will get into it when we get to it. Unfortunately, this is the first of many, many Spike abuses. The poor little baby can't seem to get a break. He's just going to get his ass beat constantly. And sometimes he deserves it, but most of the time he doesn't, and this is one of those cases. Twilight also demonstrating the opposite of kindness by letting Spike get hurt and not seeming to give a single fuck about him. Oh, Twilight. She does not start off great. Honestly, you could see her ambivalence towards others as just more... It's sort of just showing you why she needs friends, It's showing you how important it is, because if you just sort of live alone all the time, you're not really going to give a fuck about anyone. And this is where Twilight recaps the plot in a letter to Celestia so that we can sort of follow along with it. So, after 1,000 years, Nightmare Moon is going to be free of the spell Celestia used to put her in there. And then Nightmare Moon is going to bring Eternal Night, and that's just sort of the whole shebang. I'll get more into Nightmare Moon's motivations in part 2 of the episodes. This is technically the first time that we learn Princess Celestia's name, and it's also where we learn that Twilight is her student. Fun. This is it. This is where Twilight gets sent on her mission by Celestia, and where Celestia sort of starts her Machiavellian scheme. So, her master plan is going to put all of Equestria in danger many times. But we also get Celestia's quote-unquote first line. I'll get to her actual first line later, but the first thing we hear from her is her telling Twilight to calm down, I trust you, you're a great student, but you need to go make some friends. And we get a sense of kindness, sophistication, and playfulness. You expect the kindness and sophistication from a princess, and the playfulness is a little sugar on top. Here we go, Bonbon number 2 already. And the first one was in the intro, so it's kind of iffy if it counts, but I'm going to count it anyway. We also get Twilight disregarding Celestia's mission because she wants to be right, she wants adventure, it wants to be important. We also get we get some funny foreshadowing in the form of a joke where Twilight's like, saving the world doesn't hinge on me making friends. Oh boy, this poor little pony. This is technically not Pinkie's first line, but it is her first appearance. And it's just her sort of being what she's going to be for the rest of the series, let's be real. And yes, technically all these characters had their first appearances in like the intro, but who actually cares? Applejack's first line demonstrates more her character than her personality. We see her as the cowgirl. She comes in with a yeehaw. She's very forward and friendly, but all in all, this doesn't really reflect what she's going to be like the rest of the story. She sort of plays like the straight man, so I guess that's what it gives her, but she doesn't really come across in her opening line. Kind of a weak one, honestly. We get introduced to the Apple family here. Most of them come back, I'm pretty sure, in the future episodes, because we do get at least one more Apple family-centric episode. At least Apple family and the expanded family, not just the Apples. We get plenty of episodes of them. The only one that I think really actually is memorable is the first one, Apple Fritter. Also, Golden Delicious is named after Goldie Delicious, who we will learn about later. Alright, here's Rainbow Dash's introduction. Now, her lines are sort of irrelevant, but it's more of what her actions are doing. She immediately causes a problem by crashing into Twilight, getting them both covered in mud, and then immediately apologizes and tries to fix the situation by washing it off. We also find out about Pegasi magic here. We see her manipulating clouds and causing weather phenomenon. It's not explicitly stated, but it will be later. And yeah, it's a pretty good introduction to what Rainbow Dash is like. She fucks stuff up and then tries to fix it. It's a general flow. What her words actually do in the scene is sort of just demonstrate her ego and how she thinks she can do anything, she thinks she's the best at everything, and while she is very good at flying, she also does exactly what I said, cause a lot of problems. And here we get Rainbow Dash's primary goal for the series, to become a Wonderbolt. What are the Wonderbolts? All we learn in this episode is that they are the best flyers in all of Equestria. There's more about them, but honestly, that one statement alone is going to get contradicted multiple times, so we'll see. Rainbow Dash claims she can clear the sky in 10 seconds and then actually does it in 10 seconds exactly, according to the episode. Very nicely done. This also demonstrates how Rainbow Dash can be made to do anything if you just play to her ego. Here we get Rarity's first lines, and she sort of gives off the vibe of someone who is very into their work, someone who's very confident in what they do, and has been chosen for this job specifically for that point. She does seem like a bit of a perfectionist, which can come across as a bit of a problem in the future. And when she sees something wrong with someone, she immediately tries to help them, at least when it comes to fashion, showing her, oh, would you look at that, generous personality. Here we not only see Rarity using her own personal resources to give Twilight some free stuff, showing off her generosity some more, but we also learn that she is very much infatuated with Canterlot and all of the nobility that goes around there, given that it's a very regal city, and she is quite a fan of it. Here we finally get Fluttershy's introduction. We see her having a lot of patience for animals, as well as being quite skilled at handling them. And of course, when it comes to other ponies, which are basically other people, she embraces her namesake and is just a shy, kind little individual. And this is where Fluttershy meets Spike. And, well, she flips into a completely different person. She's extremely talkative and inquisitive and seems to want to learn everything she can about an animal she hasn't really met before, which is weird considering dragons are literally also on people status with their level of intelligence, and she also understands other animals with the same level of intelligence as another pony would, so it's a little weird, but this is also the most attention anyone gives Spike for like the entire series other than Twilight. It's kind of sad, really. Alright, here's Twilight's party, and what I believe is the first appearance of Derpy over there before the animation error turned her into Derpy. And you also see Lyra's first appearance, second appearance here, as well as all of Twilight's friends from Canterlot are here. Lemonheart and Twinkleshine are like right here in the middle, and there's actually two minuets, one on the left and right. And there's also a copy and pasted Lyra on the left, and there's just, they copy and paste a lot in the early seasons, and we're going to be pointing some of that out whenever we see it. And here we get Pinkie's first actual line instead of her just gasping, which shows that she explains that this whole party that she threw was specifically for Twilight. And the reason she threw it was because she recognizes everyone in Ponyville, but didn't recognize her, so figured she needed a welcome to Ponyville party. This shows obviously kindness, compassion, and a desire to spread joy, all reflecting pretty well on Pinkie's character, at least for the early seasons. I've got a lot of words for Pinkie later. Also, there's a bonbon back here. I definitely missed this on my first pass through. Immediately after Pinkie's introduction, we get introduced to one of her primary tropes of the series, being that she sometimes talks really, 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 really fast in order to explain things or, solve plot contrivances, the classic comic relief bits. It also hints that she hates boring things, which is some deep-ass foreshadowing for the future of the series, considering where she grew up. It's not really hard to see, but Twilight starts pouring the only different colored bottle at the table, which we can assume is definitely not juice or whatever it's supposed to be. But immediately after this is where Pinkie Pie reveals that she just completely misinterprets a lot of people's actions and sometimes even their words, which is sort of part of a deeper character arc for Pinkie where she cares not a lot for other people's feelings and instead focuses more on making them happy to make her happy. There's a lot of problems with Pinkie, and we'll just sort of tackle them as they come. Here, Twilight just sort of stares at the moon and thinks about how she hopes that the Nightmare Moon story is just a fairy tale, as Celestia said. But she's also kind of disheartened that no one's really taking her seriously, which shows that she has strong belief in herself and a lot of knowledge, and she kind of wants to do something important with her life, which is a running theme with Twilight throughout the course of the series. Here we get Mayor Mayor's first appearance, and yes, her name is literally Mayor Mayor. It's like having someone named Woman. It's real awkward, very confusing. Here we see Lyra Heartstrings number 3, and that up there confirms it's Derpy. You see her, yep, she's right there. This one screenshot is a copy and paste bonanza. There's at least 9 bonbons in Lyra's, and a bunch of other ponies I don't give a shit about. Also, this pony here has an adult version of Babs's design, which is really interesting. Did not notice that immediately. Here we see Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo introduced for the first time. We don't get their names or anything, but we saw Apple earlier with Applejack's introduction. But here, all 3 of them are together, even though they don't canonically meet until the school episode later, because they all, introduce themselves for the first time. It's a little strange. Here we see more of the main 6's personalities. Rainbow likes to dash into action. Applejack likes to hold people back and just sort of pay attention to what the situation's actually going to evolve into, while Pinkie Pie seems to not really give a shit about what's going on, and Fluttershy is cowering like usual. We don't get a lot from Rarity, unfortunately. And Twilight's looking to, solve the problem. Here we see Twilight was right about everything, because of course she was, there wouldn't be a plot otherwise. And that Nightmare Moon is returned, and she's going to cast the world into eternal darkness, so that way she can rule over it forever. She also explains who Nightmare Moon is to everyone, because no one really understood, or believed, or even listened to her. Also, there is a Lyra here, but it doesn't count because it's still the same setting that they were in before. They haven't changed locations. This is probably the most useful Mayor has ever been, and all she does is yell at the royal guards to actually do their job, because they were just sort of faffing about for no reason. And they also immediately do nothing and get mollywopped by fucking Nightmare Moon, so that's going to be another recurring theme where the royal guards and most guards in general are pretty useless in most situations. This is one of the few times where Spike actually gets treated like the baby he is and is left to go sleep at home instead of join them on the life-threatening, dangerous adventure. Honestly, this probably should have happened a lot more, but well, baby gotta fight. I don't remember how frequently it happens, so I'm probably going to point it out whenever I notice it, but this is one of the times where Rainbow Dash gets completely accusatory towards someone without waiting for any evidence. Here we see Applejack holding back Rainbow Dash again, except this time it's to prevent her from just jumping into conclusions. This is showing us that Applejack tends to be more level-headed than everyone else. In this scene, Twilight is telling everyone about the elements of harmony and how she doesn't know what they look like or where they are, even though I think she saw them in the book she was reading in Canterlot. I'm going to double check that and post the picture if it is there. Also, this is the first time Pinkie just sort of creates a solution out of nowhere or finds out what the problem is and immediately solves it or guesses the plot. She does this a lot. We'll be pointing that out occasionally. I don't know if I'm going to make it a whole tracking thing like the background pony thing. Also, Twilight tends to overthink the problem and doesn't realize that the book about the elements is under E. She tends to overthink a lot and it's going to cause a lot of problems in the future. Again, probably won't keep track of it, but I will point it out if I notice it. Yeah, no, they do actually show not the elements of harmony, not once, but twice, and they also show Celestia wearing the crown that Twilight gets, but she never wore that in the flashback in the future season, I'm pretty sure. So, oops. Now, I went and checked, and she does have her regular crown on, but she does not have the star crown that's shown in the book that Twilight is reading. So Also, Twilight is reading this all out of a book, as we learn at the end of this scene. So she should know all of this information and just doesn't. Here is what is probably the most disappointing part of the first 2 episodes, is that they do a roll call for everyone's elements before they go on the whole journey to the twin sisters' castle, which definitely demonstrates their elements better. If they just listed the elements without doing the little panning shot they do to show which element corresponds to which pony, and instead just let them demonstrate their elements as they do later on, it would have come across way less forced and boring, but it is a kid's show at the end of the day. So unfortunately, you have to do with the bad as well as the good. I'm not entirely sure why they decided to go with a wispy goo creature instead of just having her be normal, but I guess it's because it would be a little bit obvious if a giant alicorn was standing outside of their window, so it is what it is. This is also the first mention we get of the castle of the twin sisters, which is where they'll be going back to a lot, honestly. At least like half a dozen to a dozen times. Here we finally get introduced to the Everfree Forest, which is a very common recurring area throughout the story. We don't get a lot of information about the Everfree Forest throughout the series, we just know that it's a weird place where weird stuff happens. Despite being the most cowardly and weak of all of the ponies, why does Fluttershy look like she's super fucking confident and completely chill going into the Everfree Forest? Sure, she's probably the least vulnerable of any of the ponies because of her animal skills, but she's not confident about anything. It doesn't make any sense, at least not until later. I have a rant coming about Nightmare Moon's motivations and how they do kind of make sense and are honestly kind of a little sad. I'm just going to point out all of the things that she causes to happen. She starts out by seeping her essence into a cliff and causing it to fall, which is probably the most dangerous of all the things she does to them. For the pilot, where they're trying to establish everyone's character, this is where we get to see Applejack at her most pure, in her honest state. She immediately goes into danger to help Twilight. Immediately is like, hey, can you trust me? I need you to just listen to me. And she chooses to listen. Twilight just listens to her and everything works out great. Now, all that being said about Applejack, why didn't Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash just, fly over and grab Twilight? Why did Applejack need to drop her? It was obviously to establish that Applejack will never lie to her, but it just feels really funny that they're just like, yeah, let's traumatize Twilight a little bit. This will be fine. Here, we not only get a demonstration of the magic that Earth ponies have, which is their enhanced physical aptitude, but we also see the look on Twilight's face of just, wow, she was telling the truth. I cannot believe I can actually trust someone like that. Just the sheer look of relief and hope in Twilight's face right now is just wholesome as shit. The next thing Nightmare Moon decides to throw at them is just a angry manticore, which is horrendously dangerous and kind of funny. It's not as bad as it could be, though, and the rant is coming. This is also a very accurate manticore. However, there are also other versions of the manticore that have spines on their tail instead of a scorpion tail. But this is still perfectly accurate. Here, Rainbow Dash does something that she will be doing a lot for these early seasons, where she just sort of starts bragging like crazy about stuff that she did. It's gonna get an entire episode dedicated to it, so we'll get to that when we get to that. While not really a blink and you'll miss it moment, it is a relatively quick shot where they do show that Fluttershy recognizes something wrong with the manticore for this scene. Also, throughout the entirety of the scene, the manticore does not seem to have a thorn in its paw, but it will just magically gain one afterwards. Jesus, Rarity just fucking dropkicks the guy! And here, Fluttershy demonstrates her element of kindness. She stops and thinks, why the heck is this manticore attacking us out of nowhere? And so decides to investigate and see what the problem is. She uses her natural understanding and ability to communicate with animals to talk to it and literally tell it, don't worry, I'll help you, it's fine, and immediately becomes friends with it. And here, Nightmare Moon possesses a tree. This is the biggest hint as to what rant I'm gonna go on, so if you figure it out, let me know. Oh boy, it's time for the very first song review. And the very first song of the series is called fucking Giggle at the Ghosties. Right off the gate, the name is like a 0 out of 10. It's not great. The song itself is not the worst thing. It's at least catchy and peppy and helps teach kids, don't worry if you're scared. You can try to laugh it off. It doesn't work in every situation, but it's at least a nice message, I guess. Also, outside of the song, this is just showing Pinkie Pie's, element of laughter as they literally laugh away the danger, which is, it makes sense in universe because the elements of harmony, the individual elements are literal magic and possess their own magic even without the element of magic. I said magic a lot, I know. There's a lot of fucking bullshit magic going on in the series, but this is literal magic they're using by literally laughing at them. That's the power. One last thing about the scene is the show literally calling out that Pinkie Pie just starts fucking singing out of nowhere, which means from this point on, because the show is self-aware, all this singing happens in fucking universe, and everyone just goddamn rolls with it, and if you don't find that implication funny as fuck, I don't want to be friends with you. So we see Twilight being actually happy with the girls here, and this is the first time I think we see this. It might have happened once or twice earlier, but she's just genuinely happy right now, whereas before she was either sad, serious, or scared. But this is her being genuinely happy to be around these girls when they've been trying to make friends with her, and before she literally said, why does every pony in this town want to make friends all the time? That was literally a quote she said, but now here she is, making friends while on a journey to save the world. Can you believe we saw Steven Magnet before we even saw fucking Princess Celestia or Luna? This is actually insane to me. Also, this isn't the last time we'll see Steven. He shows up at least 2 more times, both of which involve a certain cranky donkey. This is unironically one of Rarity's best character moments in the entire series, and it's in the first fucking 2 episodes. She immediately, after everyone's like, oh wow, this sea serpent's causing problems because his mustache is broken. Why don't we just fly over? What's wrong with this guy? And Rarity immediately tells him to shut up because it matters to him, and so it immediately matters to her, and she wants to help solve the problem. That's an incredibly good character trait to give someone immediately, and it maintains pretty good consistency throughout the series. If someone is having a problem that matters to them, Rarity will generally take it pretty seriously. And immediately followed by a scene of Rarity damaging her own self-image, which she has been shown to care greatly about to help someone else. This is just peak generosity right here. It shows that Rarity is a great person. She's probably the best individual of the group, at least in these early seasons. They definitely backtrack on this a lot and make her a bit more stuck up and a bit more focused on her own self. Those are mainly episodes involving her sister and Applejack. So we'll get to those and I'll complain about it then, but right now, this is peak Rarity. The Pegasi deciding to bounce instead of fly over. Probably just because they wanted to do it for fun, but it's still kind of funny. The show demonstrating it is self-aware and purposefully chose to ignore flight in order to get character moments out, which is, you know, not the best way to write things, but it's whatever. Pinkie Pie questions how they're going to get over this giant ravine now that the bridge is out, and Rainbow Dash is like, duh, I have wings, and goes to fly over and set the bridge back up. Another question that pops up is why don't Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash just bring the ponies over to the other side 1 by 1, or 2 by 2 in this case. It would only be 2 trips, and it's a pretty short distance, so it would be pretty easy to do. The main reason is because we need to get Rainbow Dash's element of loyalty out there, so we'll be getting to that next. As we saw earlier, but just reinforcing the character trait, Rainbow Dash is immediately ready to throw hooves and will fuck up anyone who gets in their way. Here, Rainbow actually gets to demonstrate a little bit of humility, as when Nightmare Moon, disguised as the Shadow Bolts, says they're looking for the best flyer in Equestria, she doesn't immediately go, oh, well, you found her. She goes, wait, who? Showing that, you know, she's not entirely conceited, and she'll generally only gas herself up while not immediately thinking she's better than everyone else, even though there are episodes where that becomes a big point, and we'll get to that when we get to that. This is one of the weirdest powers Nightmare Moons demonstrates, where she creates, like, seemingly living ponies out of nowhere, and then I guess it's her talking through them, but it doesn't sound like her. She's got weird deception magic going on, which is not something we see her use a lot. I mean, we've seen her do a lot of possession, but this is completely different. And Rainbow Dash demonstrates here her loyalty, her element, with just being offered the world and saying, nah, I got homies to help, which is, it's not something I think she does a lot in the series, honestly, and I'm kind of tempted to keep track of that as well, and I'm going to call it out whenever I see her actually doing something, you know, humble and kind for others, while giving up something in return, not just in general when it doesn't really affect her. Rainbow says she'll never leave her friends hanging here, which I'm pretty sure she's going to do that a lot, actually. But this is also the most subtle representation of a pony's element, because the other ones are all like, I'm telling you the honest truth. Sometimes all you need is some kindness. Twilight tells Rarity that she's so generous, and Pinkie Pie, they're all literally laughing. So it's a little bit more subtle in this case, where it makes the roll call from last episode even worse. Twilight says she needs some space because she doesn't know what's going to happen. So the other main characters are just like, yeah, let's just leave her alone, despite the fact that we've been dealing with a bunch of weird, crazy events that's happening, and Nightmare Moon is on the hunt for all of them. But yeah, sure, let's just leave her alone and isolated in this dank, dark, decrepit castle. Sounds like a great plan. Oh no, Twilight, you got taken by Nightmare Moon. So here we get the start of some really good Twilight teleportation continuity. She starts out by being able to teleport a very short distance, and it makes her very dizzy afterwards. We'll see how this progresses throughout the series. Alright, we finally arrived here at the Nightmare Moon rant. So, Nightmare Moon's motivations. Here she wanted to destroy the elements. We finally see the results of that. So, why did she not really stop the main six from getting here? She knew where to go, she overheard it, so she didn't need to wait for them. She could have just come over here and destroyed them immediately. So, what was with all the bullshit before? Obviously, they needed to write in their elements. They need to show them what everyone is about. They need to develop their characters and everything for the whole adventure. But Nightmare Moon specifically, her motivations are strange, don't you think? Why didn't she try to kill them, stop them? We see what Alicorn's gonna do in the future, and it's fucking wild that she just ignores them and throws harmless things at them. Like, they fall off a cliff. Half of them are unicorns and or magic users that will be able to stop themselves from dying. Not really that big of a threat. They throw the Manticore at them. Again, flying and magic, not really a threat. The fucking spooky trees. The trees don't actually move or do anything, they just look spooky. She just tries to scare them away, like it's harmless. The fucking bridge, she just tries to not let them cross the bridge, even though, again, Fluttershy has fucking wings, she can just fly them all across. It would be slower, but they could do it. So she's just trying to stall them, it seems like, when she could have just come here faster and destroyed them, because it's not like the elements are hidden. She had the elements before they even, like, showed up, so she could have just destroyed them. So the idea is, she never actually wants to hurt anyone. That's not her goal. Her goal isn't to kill anyone or hurt anyone. She wants to just be beloved. She wants to rule Equestria, which is kind of sad because we get to see Luna and she's just horribly traumatized. She feels so neglected and alienated by her sister, by the people that are supposed to be, her subjects, that she let those dark thoughts manifest into this horrific monstrosity of a being. And it's just very depressing, honestly. And we get to see that shortly, where she horribly regrets these actions, but she can't physically stop herself from doing it. So her 1,000 years of darkness thing was never going to actually cause anyone harm. She just wanted to be the ruler who was beloved like her sister was, which is a whole thing with Luna. And we get one of the best episodes in the series involves that entire premise and problem. So while I think it's a little forced in how they do this episode, Nightmare Moon not killing them or just teleporting them away or whatever makes sense because she wants people to like her, so she doesn't want to actually hurt them or cause them any harm. It's weird. It's complicated, man. It's real weird. I don't think it's bad, but it's not great. It's kind of just tragic at the end of the day. And here we finally learn the spark that's needed to activate the elements. The spark of friendship, which doesn't exactly make sense because how did Celestia use them? Did Celestia just forcibly activate them? Is she like that strong that she's just like, yeah, I'm just going to make them bend to my will and utilize their powers like a magic amplifier? Whereas Twilight and her friends are actually embodiments of the elements. Like the elements themselves created them or like bonded to them, which might be linked to the Sonic Rainboom episode, which we'll get to, which covers all their backstories and everything. So that might be a theory I'm going to run with for a little bit. So as cringy and maybe childish or, whatever as it is that the spark needed to save the day is literally friendship. It's literally Twilight realizing that friends matter, that she needs them in her life. It's just wholesome. I like wholesome. Wholesome is nice. Here Twilight does like another roll call, or even a recap if you want to call it that, about everyone's elements and how they represented them across their journey. And it would have been better if they didn't have that first recall in the first episode and they just had the journey and you could put the pieces together yourself, and then here at the end they give you the confirmation like, yes, this is what they all represent, this is everyone's together, and Twilight herself represents the element of magic. However, what the fuck is the element of magic even mean? We saw that laughter earlier is literally imbued with magic before the element of magic is even activated by the spark. So laughter itself has magic, as it was able to purge the fucking evil trees that didn't do anything. So what even is the element of magic? Does it just amplify all the other elements? What, is it just friendship? Is friendship the other element? But what does that even mean? The powers of the elements of harmony is extremely nebulous and never really tells us what they can do. They can do basically anything. Like they turned a person to stone, they sent someone to the moon, they just sort of erase some people. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and I would wish it was a little bit more explored, but I guess the whole deal is the power of friendship doesn't always make sense. It just is, which is dumb. So why did the elements give Rarity her tail back? I don't exactly know the reason, and I don't want to pretend to know the reason. Also, they have bling now. I'm not going to bother going into it. I don't even know why it's even there. Hey, Celestia's reveal. What do you know? Also, it didn't seem like she was held captive. She just sort of appeared in a ball of light. So she also reassures everyone like, hey, I knew you could do it. Good job. You guys are great. It just sort of gives them a bunch of reassurance and pride and loves everything about them. But it makes you wonder, where was she? What did Nightmare Moon do to her that she just sort of showed up? We don't really know. She offhandedly reveals here that she knew Nightmare Moon was coming back and that they would need the elements of harmony to beat her, but then didn't use them herself and decided to instead manipulate Twilight to making friends in Ponyville so that way she could make friends with the elements of harmony's manifestations so that way they would all come here together and defeat Nightmare Moon, but not in the same way Celestia did because friendship purified the dark magic so that Luna is back now? What? Celestia's a fucking psychopathic Machiavellian schemer, and it's honestly terrifying and makes the later seasons even more annoying to me. This is also technically a hint towards her more playful and chaotic personality. So immediately after that terrifying revelation, we get Celestia immediately trying to mend broken bridges between her and her sister and share the power that she's had for 1,000 years, which demonstrates deep love and care for her sister, while also demonstrating deep humility and lack of corruption, which is probably what's led to her being so beloved over the years. This is one of the best character moments for Celestia and shows that she is deeply caring and forgiving towards others and just all around a very nice pony, and that totally won't come back to bite us in the butt in 6-7 seasons. And here we get Luna's first line, which is basically pure regret and sadness, which is entirely Luna's character. She is going to literally torture herself over her actions. She also sounds weirdly young here, but that's going to change as the voice actor changes later on. Another thing to note here is Luna expressing deep regret and sadness and love and care for her sister. I sure hope this doesn't come back to bite us in the butt in future episodes. Ding ding, Lyra and Derpy. Dat dare is Bon Bon 3. This is the first time that Luna perceives she's been loved by the people. God damn if that's not tragic. The look on her face says everything. Here, Celestia basically just tells us what the plot is going to be for like the first 2 or 3 seasons before the plot sort of changes around a bunch, which is Twilight is now going to stay in Ponyville and learn friendship. Hooray! She needs to learn how to utilize the power of friendship to save the world or something. This is probably all a part of Celestia's maniacal scheme. As we learn later on, she planned a lot of things in advance. So in this scene, Celestia, after she, tells everyone all that stuff, she is literally demonstrating strong judgment and problem-solving skills. Keep that in mind for like a year or 2 from now when we get to some future Celestia episodes. And we close out our introductory